Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and Miyirtz Hashem today we will be learning Daf Ayin Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today on the very bottom line of Ayin Amid Aleph with a brand new Siman Reish Tzadik Hey, Havdalah She'oise Shliach Tzibur, the Havdalah that is recited by the Shliach Tzibur, by the Chazan in the Beis HaKnesses, Ubay Seif Echad, and here we have one Seif. Our learning should be a schus, Refuah Shalema for Tzvi ben Leah Miriam, for Chava Hadassah Bas Rezel Serel. Our learning should also be a schus for Yisrael ben Rachel, Yonasan ben Michal, Yoel ben Michal, together with Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanasunu Bat Saru Bat Shivya, Ha'imdim Bein Bayom Ubein Bayabasha, Ha'makayim Yirachem Aleihem V'Yetziim Yitzarel L'Rvacha, Me'afelu La'Eiro Mishibud L'Geula, Hashta Ba'Gala Uvizman Kariv V'Noimar Amen. Okay, says the Mechaber. Actually, this is one of those Simanim, Siman Reish Tzadik Hey, that begins with the words of the Ramah. It doesn't begin with the words of the Shulchan Aruch. So it doesn't even say here in the Shulchan Aruch that this is Sif Aleph. This is the Ramah speaking. Says the Ramah on the bottom line of Ayin Amid Aleph, Hagah. Va'oimrim v'hinoyam v'seder kedusha on Motzei Shabbos after Ma'ariv. So we finish the Ma'ariv Shemona Esrei. After the Ma'ariv Shemona Esrei, we have a Chatzi Kaddish. After Chatzi Kaddish, we say V'hi Noyam together with Yoshev B'Seiser Elyon and V'Seder Kedusha. And we say what we call Kedusha Desidra. We say part of Uvalat Zion. As the Mishnah Berurah is going to explain, we don't start with the words Uvalat Zion Gael and Va'ani Zois Brisi Oisam. That we don't say. We begin right away with Va'ata Kadosh. So we say V'hi Noyam, Yoshev B'Seiser Elyon. Then we go to Va'ata Kadosh Yoshev Tehillos Yisrael. And the Ramah says we say it Ba'arichus. We should say it slowly. The Mishnah Berurah is going to say that we should say it b'ni'imas koil. We should say it in kind of like a beautiful sing-song, but we should take our time saying V'hi Noyam and Yoshev B'Seiser and Va'ata Kadosh. Why? Kedei la'acher seder kedusha. Because we want to delay our completion of saying Va'ata Kadosh with the Kedusha Tesidra, Kadosh, 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 Baruch Kavod Hashem Mikaimai. We want to delay our completion of that recitation. Why? Very interesting reason. Says the Ramah, She'oz Chayzrim Rishayim L'Gehenim. Because, as we've stated already several times, the neshamas that Nabach are suffering through Gehenim, they get a reprieve for Shabbos. We're going to see the Medrash. The Medrash says that when Shabbos comes in, the Memuna, the Gabai, over the neshamas up in Shamayim, gives a klap, and the Memuna makes an announcement, and he says that all of the neshamas that are in Gehenim, they now get a reprieve. The suffering in Gehenim ends for the duration of Shabbos. And then at the end of Shabbos, he makes another announcement. And he says, now it's time for the neshamas to go back into Gehenim. But that does not happen until Klal Yisrael completes the Kedusha Desidra. Now, this kind of gets a little bit complex because we know that we have different time zones around the world. So exactly when does this take place? I'm not sure. But whatever it is, beyond our pay grade, whatever it is, the neshamas don't go back into Gehenim until Klal Yisrael finishes Kedusha Desidra. So we're not in a rush to finish Kedusha Desidra, Rabbi Isai. Take your time. Say, V'inoyam Yoshev B'Seiser Va'ata Kadosh. Take your time saying it. Extend the reprieve that the neshamas get from Gehenim. Okay, let's pause here for a moment. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Back in Ayin Amid Aleph says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in Aleph. Va'oimrim v'hi noyam. We say v'hi noyam. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'noyhagen, the minig is lichboil pasik oirech yamim. At the end of Yoshev B'Seiser, we have the pasik oirech yamim azbiyehu va'areyu b'yeshuasi. We say it twice. Oirech yam azbiyehu va'areyu b'yeshuasi. Oirech yam azbiyehu va'areyu b'yeshuasi. He brings this down from the Torah, Ayin Sham Hatam. He says, if you look in the Torah, you'll see the reason. The reason I believe is because if you count the psukim from the beginning of Vihinoyam until the end of Yosha B'Seser, until the end of the pasuk Erech Yom Asbiyei V'Ar'eu B'Shuasi, we want to reach the gematria of 129. We want to have 129 words. Not the gematria of the total gematria of all the letters, but we want to have 129 words in that recitation that begins with V'Hinoyam and ends Va'ar'eu B'Yeshuasi. In order to reach the total of 129, we have to repeat that pasuk twice. Why do we want to reach 129? Again, this is a little bit beyond at least my pay grade, but it's because 129 is associated with one of the shemos of the Rebbeinu Shalom, one of the names of the Rebbeinu Shalom, and on Motzei Shabbos we want to invoke that shem of the Rebbeinu Shalom, so we have to repeat the pasuk Erech Yom Asbiyei V'Ar'eu B'Shuasi twice. Continues the Chavetz Chaim, and he says, "Upasuk V'Hinoyam Tzarich LaAmroi Mu'umad," brings down from the Achronim that the pasuk V'Hinoyam Hashem Elokeinu Aleinu U'Ma'aseh Yadeinu Kanu Aleinu Ma'aseh Yadeinu Kanuneu, that pasuk should be recited specifically while standing. V'yesh b'kaimais, the Chavetz Chaim says there are places she'ein oimrim v'hinayam beveis ha'avel, where they do not recite v'hinayam in the house of an ovel, in a shiva home. Rak maschilin Yoshe b'seiser, they just go directly to the beginning of Yoshe b'seiser. They don't preface it with the pasuk of v'hinayam. Ois cotton beis v'seder kedusha. We say the kedusha desidra. Hainu, Chavetz Chaim explains, shamaschilin mivi'ata kadosh. We don't say the entire Uval Tzion. We don't begin Uval Tzion. Instead, we go straight to Va'ata Kadosh. Ve'ein oimrim Uval Tzion goyel lefi she'ein geula balayla. The pasuk Uval Tzion goyel, Uval Tzion goyel. That's normally what we say. That Uval Tzion goyel, the Rebbeinu Shalom will send to Tzion goyel. The geula will come. Mashiach will come. Uval Tzion goyel. It's not appropriate to say that on Motzei Shabbos because the geula does not come at night. So at night we're not going to say Uval Tzion goyel. V'lochein, and therefore gam va'ani zois brisi. Also the pasuk of va'ani zois brisi oisam amar Hashem. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, "This is my bris that I made together with Klal Yisrael, that the Torah will not be forgotten. The Torah will not be taken from Klal Yisrael." It's a pasuk. So let me just read it inside. Dvarim Shabiksav Yata Rashoy La'imram Balpeh. So it says over here, the pasuk is Va'ani Zois Brisi Oisam Amar Hashem. This is my bris, together with Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, Ruchi Asher Olecha, my ruach that rests on Klal Yisrael, Udvarai Asher Samti Beficha, and the words that I have placed in your mouths, which is a reference to the Torah HaKadosha, Lo Yamushu Mipicha U'Mipi Zaracha U'Mipi Zera Zaracha Amar Hashem E'ata Va'ad Olam. This is the bris that the Rebbeinu Shalom makes with us, that as long as we put in our hishtadlus, as long as we do what's necessary, as long as we have yeshivas, and we have batei midrashim, and we have people sitting down to learn Torah, the Rebbeinu Shalom gives us a haftacha that the Torah Akdosha will never chas v'shalom be forgotten from Klal Yisrael. Rav Moshe writes in several places, of course, this promise is contingent upon Klal Yisrael doing what's upon them to do. The Rishiva Zatzal brought down, it quotes the example of several towns in upstate New York that, for years and years and years, people have traveled to during the vacation months during the year. So he talks about Ellenville and Liberty and Woodburn, and he says if you go to those towns, you'll see that there are a lot of streets that are named after Jews. These were all towns that had significant Jewish populations, and yet when you go back there, there's nothing. It's a wilderness when it comes to Yiddishkeit. Not anymore. Nowadays it's being built up again. But if you go back 25 years ago, those towns, except for the bungalow colonies during the summers, those towns were ghost towns when it came to Yiddishkeit. There were boarded up shuls. There was nothing else. What happened? So Rav Moshe Rod, tell you what happened. They didn't make yeshivas. since they didn't make yeshivas, there was no Torah left. The kids grew up, they became completely assimilated. So this HaTorah that the Rebbeinu Shalom has with us, that the Torah Dirshu will not be forgotten, signified by this pasuk, V'anizos Brisei Amar Hashem, it's contingent upon us doing what we need to do. You need to make Bati Midrashim, you need to make yeshivas, you have to have a chinuch system where you're raising the children and you're teaching the children. But so long as we do what's upon us to do, the Rebbeinu Shalom gives us a HaTorah that the Torah Dirshu will not be forgotten. Again, says the Mishnah Berurah, V'lachein gam va'anizos brisi ein oimrim. We don't say the pasuk of va'anizos brisi Motzei Shabbos, lefi shesmuchim heim lahadodi b'sefer Yeshaya. He brings this down from the Taz. So, what we're hearing over here is like this. Motzei Shabbos after Shemona Esrei, we have Chatzi Kaddish. Then we say V'hinoyam and Yosha B'Seiser. Then we say Kedusha Desidra. But we leave out Uvol Tzion Goyel, because that's not appropriate to say at night, because the Geula doesn't come at night. And we leave out V'anizos Brisei Amar Hashem, even though that would be appropriate to say at night, but we leave it out because it happens to be next to the pasuk of Uvol Tzion Goyel in Yeshaya. Once we're leaving out one, we leave out the other as well. Umashe Kosav She'oimrim Ba'arichus, says the Chavetz Chaim, this that the Mechaber writes, that we should take our time saying V'hinoyam, Yosha B'Seiser, and Kedusha Desidra, Hainu B'ni'imas Koil. What this means is that we should say it in a very sweet way. We should have a nice niggin. We should say it in a pleasant way. Why? Kedei sheyisarech ma'at yoser, so that it should take a little longer to say it. Ula'akev l'risham milachza legehenim, so that we give the risham that are being nidain in Gehenim, that are being judged in Gehenim, we give them a little bit of a lengthier reprieve, and we save them from suffering in Gehenim. The adshi ashlimu Yisrael sidreim, turning now to Ayin Amud Beis, because until Klal Yisrael finishes reciting the Kedusha Desidra, Nimsheches Kedusha Shabbos, the Kedusha of Shabbos is still there. Until we finish saying Va'ata Kadosh on Motzei Shabbos, even though we already davened Shemona Esrei of Ma'ariv, we already said Havdalah in Ma'ariv, but there's still a certain amount of Kedusha of Shabbos that extends into Motzei Shabbos. Va'achakach Chayzrim L'Gehenim. And then, once we finish the Kedusha Desidra, the Neshamas are going to have to go back to Gehenim. U'kamoisha Amru Chazal, this is like we find Chazal say in the Medrash Tanchuma, Deba Motzei Shabbos, on Motzei Shabbos, Tzoyek HaMamuna al Haruchais. The Gabbai that's in charge of the Neshamas makes an announcement, and he cries out and he says, Chizru leGehenim, go back to Gehenim, Shekfar Hishlimu Yisrael es Sidreim, because Klal Yisrael has already completed their Seder, the order of davening on Motzei Shabbos. Therefore the Kedusha Shabbos is gone, and now you have to go back to Gehenim. Let's finish off the words of the Ramah here, top line in Ayin Amud Beis. It says the Ramah, halacha that we're all familiar with, Ubizman she'ein oimrim v'hinoyam. When you have a Motzei Shabbos where you do not say v'hinoyam, when don't you say v'hinoyam on Motzei Shabbos? Kigoin, for example, shechal Yom Tov b'shavua. If a day of Yom Tov falls out in the coming week, ein oimrim seder kedusha. We don't say v'hinoyam. Once we don't say v'hinoyam, we also do not say v'ata kadosh. Aval oimrim v'yiten lecha, but we do say v'yiten lecha elikim mishmani mitala shamayim ushmani haaretz, and all of those psukim and paragraphs that you find in the siddur that it's a minig to say on Motzei Shabbos. There's a lot that still needs explaining over here. Let's take a look here in the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is cut in Gimel. So the Ramah said, on Motzei Shabbos where we don't say v'hinoyam, for example, on a Motzei Shabbos when there's going to be a day of Yom Tov in the coming week, then we don't say v'hinoyam. Why not? Why don't we say v'hinoyam? Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. It says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in Gimel. Kegoin shechal Yom Tov. For example, if Yom Tov falls out in the coming week, says the Chavetz Chaim, Hainu afilu chal b'yom shishi. This is true even if Friday, the coming Friday, is going to be a day of Yom Tov. Okay, so why don't we say v'hinoyam if there's a day of Yom Tov during the week? Explains the Chavetz Chaim. De be'inon shekol hashavua yeroi l'melacha. In order to say v'hinoyam on Motzei Shabbos, you need to have a situation where every one of the coming days of the week are going to be days that you could do malacha on. Why? Mishum diksiv boy, because the pasuk says in V'hinayam, umayse yadeinu kainana aleinu, the work of our hands, kainana aleinu. The Rabbeinu Shalom should establish them so that they should be good for us. Okay, what are we saying? What we're saying is like this. When we finish Shabbos, we're now going out into the rest of the week when we're going to do malacha. On Shabbos, we don't do any malacha. Now we're going out into the week. Now it's time for us to do malacha again. We recognize that our malacha, our ma'aseh yadayim, are not what gives us any success. It's not what gives us any bracha. The work that we do for our parnasa during the week, that's a front. That doesn't really give us our parnasa. Our parnasa comes from the Borei Olam. The work that we do is only hishtadlus. So on Motzei Shabbos, when we're going back into the week to start doing malacha, we quote the pasuk and we're mispal to the Rabbeinu Shalom, and we ask him, "Umayse yadeinu kainana aleinu." Let me just see exactly how Art Scroll teaches those words, kainana aleinu. Umayse yadeinu, I had it right. Umayse yadeinu kainana aleinu. The work of our hands, the Rabbeinu Shalom should establish for us. Umayse yadeinu kainaneu. The work of our hands, please establish it. So what are we doing? We're quoting this pasuk and we're being mispaled to the Rabbeinu Shalom that the Rabbeinu Shalom should imbue the work of our hands with success during the week. It's only appropriate to say that on Motzei Shabbos if you're going into a week where the complete week will be roy for malacha. But if there are days during the week, even one day, even if it's the coming Friday, if there's a time during the week when you're not going to be allowed to do malacha, because it's a day of Yom Tov, then you don't say this, because we're not going into a full week of malacha. Now you'll ask me a question. So what? So we're not going into a full week of malacha. Why can't we be mispal for 5 days of malacha or 4 days of malacha? I don't have an answer to that. But that's what the Chavetz Chaim is explaining here. He's saying if the coming week is going to have a day that's also b'malacha, like a day of Yom Tov, then it's inappropriate to say this. So let's see again the Mishnah Berurah here. Even if on the coming Erev Shabbos, on the coming Friday, it'll be a day of Yom Tov that's Asur b'malacha, you don't say v'hinayam. Because we need the entire week, every day of the week, to be royal l'malacha. But, says the Mishnah Berurah, this is only true of a dafka Yom Tov Gomor. But this is only true if there's a real day of Yom Tov coming in the coming week, a day that's Asur b'malacha mamish, Aval Purim. But let's say Purim falls out on Monday that week. Erev Pesach, Shachal B'mei HaChoil. Or one of the days of the week is going to be Erev Pesach. Then you still say V'hinayam, because those days are not Mamish Yom Tov. There's not Mamish and Issa Daraisa of Isser Malacha on those days. And therefore it's still appropriate to say V'hinayam. Now, going to Ois Katan Daled, the Ramah said, when we don't say V'hinayam, we also do not say V'ata Kadosh. Ois Katan Daled say the Kedusha. Why? Why are these two linked? Okay, we can't say V'hinayam, because we can't say Umaysi Yadeinu Kainu Aleinu, Masi Yadeinu Kaineu. Why can't we say V'ata Kadosh? Let's give the Neshamas in Gehenna a reprieve. Why are we leaving out V'ata Kadosh? Says the Mishnah Berurah, the V'hinayam Shaykh L'Meleches HaMishkan. The truth is that V'hinayam, this request to the Rabbeinu Shalom, Umayse Yadeinu Kainanu Aleinu, the work of our hands, the Rabbeinu Shalom should establish for us. What was it really said about? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Shaykh L'Meleches HaMishkan. This pasuk was really recited in regards to the work of building the Mishkan. Sheboi Berach Moshe Yisrael. This was a bracha that Moshe Rabbeinu gave to Klal Yisrael, B'shah shesimu Meleches HaMishkan, when they completed the work of the Mishkan. Val Yedei Zeh Sharsa Shchina. This brought the Hashras HaShchina. This brought the divine presence down onto the Mishkan. Klal Yisrael went and built the Mishkan. This is Ma'aseh Yadeinu. The Mishkan was the work of our hands. It was built by, it was the goods, all the materials were donated by Klal Yisrael. It was made and built by different craftsmen. The one in charge was Bezalel and Ahaliav. Certain things Moshe Rabbeinu did. It was put up by Moshe Rabbeinu at the beginning and later on by the Leviim. But the construct of the Mishkan was the work of the hands of Klal Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu gave a bracha to Klal Yisrael, and he said, Ma'aseh Yadeinu kainen aleinu. The Rebbeinu Shalom should establish for us the work of our hands. What does that mean? He should rest the Shechina. He should bring the divine presence down onto the work of our hands. And v'zeu shemasmichin pasuk, and this is why when we say v'hinayam, we say next to it va'ata kadosh yoshev tehilos Yisrael. What do those words mean? Those words mean va'ata, and you, Rebbeinu Shalom, yoshev tehilos Yisrael. You're the one who sits. What does that mean? He sits. He rests his Shechina upon tehilos Yisrael, upon the praises of Klal Yisrael. What does that mean? That the Rebbeinu Shalom rests his presence upon our praises. So there's layers and layers and layers of meaning here, and most of it probably is way beyond my pay grade. But from 30,000 feet, a very simple explanation is that a king that has no subjects is not a king. How does the Rebbeinu Shalom's malchus, how does his sitting upon the throne of kingdom, how does it manifest itself in a way? From Tehilos Yisrael, from the fact that we, Klal Yisrael, acknowledge it. If there's nobody that's acknowledging the Rebbeinu Shalom's Malucha, then it's not manifest in the world. Now, it's true, it's manifest in the world. I mean, just look at the trees outside. They have leaves on them because the Rebbeinu Shalom made it so. But if nobody recognizes it, if everybody in the world, chas v'chalila, would be walking around believing in evolution and the Big Bang Theory and all sorts of other nonsense, then nobody's recognizing the Rebbeinu Shalom's Malchus. So the fact that Klal Yisrael is here and they are uttering Tehilos Yisrael, they're uttering the praises of the Rebbeinu Shalom, and they're acknowledging and recognizing the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's what sits the Rebbeinu Shalom upon the Kisei HaKavod, so to speak. So that's the pasuk of Ata Kadosh Yoshev Tehilos Yisrael. So now it comes out like this. If somebody will ask you, why do we say V'hinayam on Motzei Shabbos? Oh, the answer is because we're departing Shabbos when we didn't do any malacha. We're going now into the week where we are going to do malacha. So we ask the Rebbeinu Shalom, Ma'aseh Yadeinu kainen aleinu, Ma'aseh Yadeinu kaineneu. The Rebbeinu Shalom should bless our labors, our work during the coming week with success. Okay, why do we say Va'ata Kadosh? Oh, the reason we say Va'ata Kadosh is because this pasuk, Ma'aseh Yadeinu kainen aleinu, Ma'aseh Yadeinu kaineneu, was really said about the building of the Mishkan. And therefore, we put next to it Va'ata Kadosh Yoshev Tehilos Yisrael, which references the fact that the Rebbeinu Shalom rests his Shechina amongst Klal Yisrael in the Mishkan. That's what it means. Va'ata Kadosh Yoshev Tehilos Yisrael. You bring your Shechina down into the Mishkan, into the work of our hands, because we're the ones that acknowledge the presence and the Malucha of the Rebbeinu Shalom. So this is why we say V'hinayam, and this is why we say Va'ata Kadosh. Okay, why don't we say V'hinayam when there's going to be a Yom Tov during the coming week? Oh, because then there's a day in the coming week where we can't do Malacha. Since there's an Isser Malacha during the week, it's inappropriate for us to say U'ma'aseh Yadeinu kainen aleinu, Ma'aseh Yadeinu kaineneu. Why don't we say Va'ata Kadosh? Because once you knock out V'hinayam, you also knock out Va'ata Kadosh, because the two of them go together. And therefore says the Chavetz Chaim, Bizman she'ein oimrim V'hinayam, ein oimrim memela kol seder kedusha. Okay. Moving along to Mishnah Berurah's Cut and Hay, there are more referenced over here the meaning of saying the psukim of bracha of V'yitei lecha ha'elokim. Says the Mishnah Berurah is Cut and Hay V'yitei lecha she'em psukim shel bracha b'tchilas yemei hashavua. We begin the week right away when we finish davening Ma'ariv and we finish the whole format of Ma'ariv on Motzei Shabbos. Now we say brachas, we say psukim of bracha. This is from the bracha that Yitzchak Avinu gave to Yaakov Avinu. And there's a whole list over there, all sorts of beautiful psukim that have to do with bracha, that have to do with geula, that have to do with mechilas havainos. That's the way we begin the week. I think it's also brought down that's reciting the whole seder of V'yitein Lecha is a skula for Ashirus. Okay, now finally we come to Siman Reish Sadikei Sif Aleph, the second line down on Ayin Amud Beis in the Shulchan Aruch, middle of the line, says the Mechaber. Mavdil Shliach Tzibur. The minig is that in Shul, the Shliach Tzibur makes Havdalah in Shul. Mavdil Shliach Tzibur. Why? Kedei lo hoitzi mi she'en lo yayin. Because remember, there were times that Klal Yisrael were mamish poverty-stricken, and there are people who don't have wine. How are they going to make Havdalah? If they don't have wine and they don't have Chamar Medina, they don't have the ability to make Havdalah. Memela, they made Havdalah in Shul to be mitzvah to the people who won't be able to make Havdalah at home. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Vav, Mi she'en lo yayin, the mi she'yesh lo yayin, because somebody who has wine, Yoseh tov she'yavdal bebeisai. It's much better that he should make Havdalah at home. Kedei lo hoitzi es kol b'nei beitzai, in order to be mitzi all of his family members in Havdalah. So if you have wine at home, make Havdalah at home. He references us to a Mishnah Berurah that we're going to see in a couple of days in Siman Reish Tzadik Vav, where the Mishnah Berurah says that Talmidei Chachamim were bedafka not yoitza with Havdalah in Shul. They went home and they made Havdalah on their own to be Moitzi B'nei Beisai. Okay, says the Ramah Hagah. V'nagu loymar ulahaskir Eliyahu Hanavi b'Motzei Shabbos. There's an inyan to make mention of Eliyahu Hanavi on Motzei Shabbos, lehispalel sheyavai v'yivasrenu hageula, so that we should be mispal on Motzei Shabbos, that Eliyahu Hanavi should come and be the herald of the coming of the Geula. There's a special inyan to do this on Motzei Shabbos, and that's why we have Zmiris on Motzei Shabbos from Malava Malka that speak about Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Tishbi, Eliyahu Giladi, Mehera Yavai Aleinu, V'Yava Mashiach ben David. So this is why, because of this inyan. Now, why is there an inyan to mention Eliyahu Hanavi specifically on Motzei Shabbos? Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Zayin, b'Motzei Shabbos. The Issa be'erevin, because the Gemara in Erevin Mem Gimel Amud Beis says, Muftach lahen liYisrael. There's a promise to Klal Yisrael. She'ein Eliyahu ba, that Eliyahu Hanavi is not going to come. Loi ba'arvei Shabbosais, not on Erev Shabbos. V'loi ba'arvei Yom Tov, and not on Erev Yom Tov. Mipnei HaTorah, because it would be a tircha for Klal Yisrael if Eliyahu Hanavi would come on Erev Shabbos or Erev Yom Tov. I mean, come on, it's crazy time. We're busy getting ready for Shabbos. We're busy getting ready for Yom Tov. Now Eliyahu Hanavi is going to come. We have to drop everything, put down the preparation of the cholent, and we're going to have to run out to go be Makabel Eliyahu Hanavi. I'm sorry, Erev Shabbos is not the time. It sounds a little bit funny. We desperately want Eliyahu Hanavi to come. We're happy for Eliyahu Hanavi to come whenever he comes and bring the Mashiach. But the bottom line is, it's Erev Shabbos. Right? We need to prepare Shabbos. We don't have time for this on Erev Shabbos. Now what? So Mashiach should come later because we're busy on Erev Shabbos? Dagenisht. The Rebbeinu Shalom is not going to penalize us because we're busy getting ready for Shabbos. I have a funny feeling that if the Rebbeinu Shalom looked at the calendar and the Rebbeinu Shalom said, really I want to bring Eliyahu Hanavi on Erev Shabbos, but Klal Yisrael is busy. I'll wait until Sunday. I'll wait until Monday. Maybe he'll bring him Thursday. So I don't think we have to worry that the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to penalize us for Shabbos, for our Shabbos preparations. At the same time, you see over here the tremendous import of our Shabbos preparations. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, I'm not sending Eliyahu Hanavi on Erev Shabbos. People are busy getting ready for Shabbos. Memnei HaTorah. Says the Mishnah Berurah in the brackets here, Shamanichet Tzarchei Shabbos, people would have to put down their Shabbos prep, V'holchet lahakbel panov, and they're going to have to run out to go be Makabel Pnei Eliyahu Hanavi. Brings us down from Rashi. Okay, so fine. We've established so far, Eliyahu Hanavi cannot come on Erev Shabbos. He also can't come on Erev Yom Tov. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'alkein, therefore, Anu mispalalim kevan cha'avar HaShabbos. So now, as soon as Shabbos is over, we're going to be mispaled that Eliyahu Hanavi should come, v'yachal avai. Because now that he could come, Erev Shabbos he couldn't come. Now Motzei Shabbos, now he could come again. So right when we hit a period where he could come again, we want to mention him and we want to be mispal sheyavoi v'yasreinu. Okay, you couldn't come until now. Now you could come. So we're mispal right away. Please come and give us the news that Mashiach is coming. Now there's a couple of open questions over here. First of all right, we brought down from the Gemara in Eruvin that Eliyahu Hanavi cannot come on Erev Shabbos. But how about Shabbos? Right? We're saying, since Eliyahu Hanavi can't come on Erev Shabbos, so that's why on Motzei Shabbos, now Eliyahu Hanavi could come again. So right away we're mispal that Eliyahu Hanavi should come. How about on Shabbos? If, Erev Shabbos, we finish our Shabbos prep, we say, Boy V'Shalom, Mizmar Shir, now it's Shabbos, now we should be mispal, Eliyahu Hanavi, please come and be mavaser us. The answer seems to be because there's a machlokes in the Gemara in Eruvin, whether or not Eliyahu Hanavi could come on Shabbos. Why wouldn't Eliyahu Hanavi come on Shabbos? Very interesting reason. Because where's Eliyahu Hanavi coming from? He's coming from Shemayim. Shemayim might be considered out of the Tchum. If it's out of the Tchum, he can't come. So it's actually a machlokes. Are there Tchumin in Shemayim or are there not Tchumin in Shemayim? If there are Tchumin in Shemayim, then Eliyahu Hanavi can't come because he would have to come after the Tchum. So could be that Eliyahu Hanavi can't come on Shabbos. So it would be inappropriate to daven that he should come on Shabbos. So we can't daven that he should come on Erev Shabbos. He can't come. We can't daven he should come on Shabbos because he might not be able to come on Shabbos either. So Motzei Shabbos, now he could come. Now we mention Eliyahu Hanavi and we're mispal that he should come. Another question. We're saying that we have to mention Eliyahu Hanavi on Motzei Shabbos because he can't come on Erev Shabbos. But we also said he can't come on Erev Yom Tov. So maybe Motzei Yom Tov, we should also sing Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Tishbi, because now he could come. There are various explanations that are given. I think the simplest one is because Yom Tov, it falls out sometime during the week. We already were mispal on Motzei Shabbos for Eliyahu Hanavi to come. We don't have to do it again on Motzei Yom Tov. That's one reason that's given. Another reason that's given, especially Chutz La'aretz. In Chutz La'aretz, we have 2 days of Yom Tov. 1 day is only Sveika D'Yoma. Really, Eliyahu Hanavi could come. So it gets a little complex, but just at least I was ma'ur the question, and I gave you a possible teretz. V'ayin be'Eliyah Rabbah, the Chavetz Chaim says, take a look at the Eliyah Rabbah. Shekasav, who writes, those that are careful with mitzvahs, Oimrim gam shar pizmoinim v'shirim. They also say other pizmoinim, also songs and shirim are songs. A pizmoin is like a poem, poetic compositions and songs. Kasher he mitzuyim etzleinu, like we have in the bencher. If you take a look from Malava Malka, there are zmiris for Malava Malka. Amar Hashem liYaakov b'maitzah yom menucha. Also, if you take a look in the Siddur, I think it's both in Nusach Sfard and in Nusach Ashkenaz, you'll see in the Seder Motzei Shabbos, you'll see a tefillah over there. I think in most Siddurim, it says Riboin ha'elamim. The Chavetz Chaim says Riboin shel olam. Hachel aleinu. Hachel es hayamim abam likrasenu, that the Rebbeinu Shalom should prepare for us the coming days. There's a whole long tefillah. Kihu Yerushalmi. This is based on a Gemara Yerushalmi in Masechtas Brachos, the Torah Siman Reis Sadik Tes. Yesh b'kaimos. There are places shamadlikin neiris b'makam oifel that have the minig to light neiris in dark places. Now, the Chavetz Chaim doesn't say exactly what this means. In researching it, what I've found is there were places where the minig was to go out in the streets and light lamps in the street on Motzei Shabbos so that people should have light and they should be able to walk home from shul on Motzei Shabbos. And I guess the thinking is like this. Every night during the week, you can have a lamplighter who, as soon as it starts getting dark outside, he can light lamps. And now people could walk home from Ma'ariv without a problem. Motzei Shabbos, you have a problem. It's already dark when you daven Ma'ariv. The Yiddish lamplighter can't go out and light lamps. So it's very possible that when people are leaving shul, it's already too dark and people are going to be tripping and stumbling in the streets. So there was a minig. I don't know exactly who would do this, who would leave Ma'ariv early or what have you. But there was a minig to go ahead and light lights outside in the street in dark areas so that people should be able to get home from shul safely. And why is there a minig to Badafka run out to do this? Because there's a medrash that says that Shaul HaMelech, one of the reasons he was Zoicha to the rulership, to the Melucha, was because his grandfather, Kish, did this. His grandfather, Kish, made sure to go out. I'm not sure if it's brought down that he Badafka did it on Motzei Shabbos, but he had the minhag of running out to light lamps so that people should be able to walk in the streets safely. Now, from this Mishnah Berurah, it sounds like we're talking about a minhag of lighting lamps outside. It doesn't sound like a minhag to light neris on your table by Malava Malka. But that's also brought down. It is brought down that by Malava Malka you should light neris. Why? The same way we bring in Shabbos with neris, we also escort Shabbos out with neris. Now, we've already seen this concept in another place. The same way we bring Shabbos in with Kiddush al Yayin, we also escort Shabbos out with Havdalah al Hakosh shel Yayin. So too, the same way we bring in Shabbos with neris, we also escort Shabbos out with neris. Okay, let's move on now to Siman Reish Tzadik Vav. Dine Havdalah al Hayayin, the halachas of making Havdalah are the kais of Yayin, ubay ches seifim, and here we have 8 seifim. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph, Seder Havdalah, the order in which you make Havdalah. There are several brachas that Havdalah is comprised of. We have to make a Bari Priagafen, we have to make a Bari Mina Psamim, we have to make a Bari Mera Eish, we have to make a Bar Chamavdal B'Kosh L'Koil. Says the Mechaber, Seder Havdalah, the order of Havdalah is Yayin, Bari Priagafen first, Besamim, Bari Mina Besamim second, Ner, Bari Mera Eish third, Havdalah, Bar Chamavdal B'Kosh L'Koil fourth. The Simanech and the mnemonic to remember this is Yavne, Yayin Besamim Ner Havdalah. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah Ka'anal, Seder Havdalah. Hine Rambam Sarvid the Mitzvah Havdalah, he didn't Torah my Kiddush. You should know the Rambam holds that Havdalah is a Daraisa. The same way we have a Daraisa of Kiddush Friday night, we also have a Daraisa of Havdalah on Motzei Shabbos. V'hu B'chlal Zachar Es Yom Shabbos L'Kachay. We learned earlier that the Daraisa of Kiddush Friday night comes from the pasuk in the Aseres HaDibros, Zachar Es Yom Shabbos L'Kachay. You have to remember and memorialize Shabbos L'Kachay, to sanctify it by making Kiddush. Says the Rambam, that incorporates not only Kiddush Friday night, but also Havdalah on Motzei Shabbos. U'L'Kachay bein b'knisasai u'bein b'yitziasai. B'knisa, when Shabbos comes in, b'Kiddush. That's Kiddush Friday night. Ubayitzia, and when Shabbos goes out, Ba'avdalah, on Havdalah Motzei Shabbos. Both are Daraisa, Loimar, and this is in order for us to say, Shehu Muvdal B'Kedusha, that Shabbos is separated from the rest of the week, and it is sanctified, Barosh, at its beginning, Friday night, Ubasoif, and at its end, Motzei Shabbos, Misha'ar Yamim. So we kind of bracket off Shabbos from the rest of the week. The opening bracket is Kiddush Friday night. The closing bracket is Havdalah Motzei Shabbos. But, says the Mishnah Berurah, V'yesh Oimrim, there are those that say, Shu Midivrei Seifrim, that it's not a Daraisa, it's only a Derabanan. Vasmechu Akra, and this that we kind of support it with the pasuk of Zachar Es Yom Shabbos L'Kachay is not a real drasha, it's what we call an asmachta. This is a takonas Chazal. Chazal incorporated the idea of Havdalah, Motzei Shabbos, but they supported it with the pasuk of Zachar Es Yom Shabbos L'Kachay. V'tzarich liyos gamkein b'kais k'may b'kiddush, but either way, it has to be made on a kais of yayin, the same way Kiddush does. V'im hivdol batfila, if you say Atachan Antanu in your Ma'arish Shmona Esrei, l'kulei alma Havdalah ala kais d'Rabbanan. Even the Rambam, who holds that Havdalah is a Daraisa, you're already yotze your Daraisa by saying Atachan Antanu and making Havdalah in Shmona Esrei. Then the Havdalah that you make ala kais is only a Derabanan. So everybody agrees that even the Rambam, who holds that Havdalah is a Daraisa, you could be yotze your Daraisa in Shmona Esrei. Then Havdalah ala kais is a Derabanan. Continues the Mechaber. In the first line of Siman Reish Tzadik Vav, near the end of the line, says the Mechaber, V'tzarich lizar shelo yehei hakois pogum. When you make Havdalah on a kais of yayin, you have to make sure that kais is not a kais pogum. What does that mean? Let's remind you, because we already learned this in Reish Ayin Aleph by Kiddush, but says the Mishnah Berurah Cotton Beis, pogum. Hainu, what does this mean? Shem shasa echad min hayayin mitchila. If somebody already drank from that kais If you have a kais of yayin on the table, somebody drank from it during Shalosh Shudas, now you want to use it for Havdalah, that's a problem. Nifgam lahavdalah. This is called a kais pogum. This is a blemished kais. It's not bakavadik for Havdalah. You're using a used cup of wine. Somebody already drank from this. It's not a fresh cup of wine. So that's a kais pogum. It's not roi for Havdalah, the same way it would not be roi for Kiddush. U'kamayla Indian Kiddush, Le'el b'simen reish ayin al, sif yud, ayin sham b'Mishnah Berurah, v'ayin b'achrayim b'simen kuf pei gimel. Take a look at what we learned in the achrayim b'simen kuf pei gimel. Shem ha'kais ba'atzmoi pogum. Let's say the yayin is not pogum. The wine is not pogum. It's not that somebody drank from it already. The kais is pogum. What does that mean that the kais is pogum? It's broken. The kais itself is not in good shape, physically. A piece is missing. If you don't have another kais, it's okay. You could use a kais that's a little bit pogum. So over here, pogum doesn't mean the same thing. When we talk about a kais pogum, we normally mean somebody drank from the wine. It's a second-hand kais. It's a bazayin to use it for Havdalah. It's not roi for Havdalah or for Kiddush. But if the kais itself, the cup, is physically pogum, it's damaged, that's okay at least b'di'evid. Now, we also have to remember that if you have a kais that's pogum because somebody already drank from the wine, there's a way to be masakin it. There's a way to fix it. How do you fix it? You take some fresh wine and you top it off with fresh wine. That refreshes it. It makes it a new kais again. It's no longer a kais pogum. Continues now the Ramah. Says the Ramah Hagah. V'nagu loimer kaidem avdallah cha'osim babayis. As a preface, a preamble, before we make Havdalah. So really, me'ikar adin, how does Havdalah begin? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam bari pri hagafen. The first bracha of Havdalah is bari pri hagafen. So really, you could start Havdalah, Savri, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam bari pri hagafen. What comes next? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam bari eminei b'samim, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam bari mari ha'esh. But we know Havdalah doesn't start that way. It starts Hinei kel Yeshua siyaftach v'lo yevchad. That comes from this Ramah. Says the Ramah, v'nagu loimer kaidem Havdalah shaisa babayis. The minig is that before Havdalah that you make in your house, you recite Hinei kel Yeshuasi, and the pasuk of Kais Yeshuais Esa, and the pasuk of La Yehuda Ma'isa Oyra v'Simcha v'Sasvi Karl Siman Tov. These are all for a Siman Tov for the coming week. Ubishas Havdalah, and when you make Havdalah, says the Ramah, Yitnu Eineihem Ba'kois Ubaner. Rabbi said this is a very important halacha. The words of the Ramah are that when you make Havdalah, everybody, not just the one making Havdalah, should be looking at the kais, and they should be looking at the ner. Why is that? Says the Mishnah Berurah why? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Kat and Gimel, Yitnu Einei Ba'kois. They should be looking at the kais, and they should be looking at the ner. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu HaMavdil. This is referring to both the one that's making Havdalah, V'gam HaShoimim Ha'onim Amen, and also the listeners, the ones who are being yoitza with the Havdalah, and who are going to answer Amen. They should also be looking at the ner and looking at the kais. Kedei shelo yasichu daitam, so that they should be concentrating on Havdalah. Hello, they all have a chiyuv of Havdalah. According to the Rambam, it's a chiyuv daraisa. Sometimes you see somebody's making Havdalah, and there are people who are listening to Havdalah. They're joking around, they're walking around, they're having a good time. They're not paying attention to Havdalah. They're not going to be yotzei Havdalah. According to the Rambam, they're not going to be yotzei the chiyuv daraisa. Now, if they're men and they daven married, they send out the Chanantanu, they're already disposed of their Chiyuv Daraisa, they're not going to be Mekayim the Chiyuv Darabanan of Havdalah ala Kais. So it's very important, and you have to sometimes remind the family members that are around by Havdalah. Hello, Havdalah, pay attention to Havdalah. I've seen times that somebody brings in the mail in the middle of Havdalah. They're looking at the mail. Hello, it's Havdalah. You have to be paying attention to Havdalah. And that's why the Ramah says everybody should be looking at the Ner and at the Kais. Okay, now we go back into the Ramah. 3 lines up from the bottom, near the end of the line. Says the Ramah, "V'noyhagin the minig is lishpaich mikoishal yayin." Now we're going to learn the words in the Ramah, and then we're going to qualify them in the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Ramah, "V'noyhagin the minig is lishpaich mikoishal yayin al haaretz," to pour a little wine out of the kais onto the ground. Kaidem shesiem bari priagofen. before we complete the bracha of Borei Pri Hagafen. Sounds like what the Ramah is saying is like this. You fill up a kais for Havdalah, right? Now you start Havdalah with a full kais. Hinei, Kol Yishua Yaftach V'Lei Avchad, etc., etc. Savrim Ranav Rabbanan Rabbi Sai, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam. And now before you finish the bracha, pour a little wine out onto the ground. Borei Pri Hagafen. So says the Ramah. Okay, let's go further in the Ramah. Why do you do this? Kidei shelo yeh hakos pogum. In order so that the kos should not be a kos pogum. What does this mean? So I'm going to give you a heads up what the Mishnah Berurah says. The Mishnah Berurah says what these words mean is we need to remove some wine from the kos. We need to spill some wine out of the kos. Why? We're about to see why. We didn't see why yet. But we need to pour a little wine out of the kos. But by pouring wine out of the kos, we're blemishing the kos. Now, this kos pogum doesn't refer to what we learned earlier, that a kos pogum is a second-hand canned kos that somebody drank from. Oh, here we mean something else. We know that when you make a bracha on the kos is supposed to be full. When you make kiddush, you have to have a kos mole, a full kos. When you make Havdalah, you have to have a kos mole. But over here we have a problem. There's a reason why by Havdalah we need to pour a certain amount of wine out. But what are we going to do? We can't fill up the kos and then pour out wine before we start Havdalah, because then we're not making Havdalah on a full kos. We're not making the Borei Pri Hagafen on a full kos. That's a problem. So says the Ramah, you know what you do? You fill up the kos, you start Havdalah, you start making the Borei Pri Hagafen on a full kos, and then you pour a little bit out before you finish the Borei Pri Hagafen. That's what the Ramah means here. Now, why are we pouring out wine? Continues the Ramah. V'tam hashvicha. Why are we pouring out wine? Why are we creating this whole problem? Damrinan, because we say, Kol bayish lo nishbach bayayin kamayim. Any house where wine is not flowing like water, ain't boy siman bracha. That's not a siman bracha. V'oisin kein l'siman tayiv b'tchilas hashvua. And therefore, we pour wine at the beginning of the week as a siman bracha for the whole week. Shefa. We show, in this house, wine flows like water. Wine flows like water. So again, let's get straight what the Ramah said. The Ramah says like this. In order to make a siman bracha for the entire week, we need to have a full kos for Havdalah, but then we need to pour some out to show that the wine is flowing like water. But now we have a problem. When are we going to do this? We can't pour it out before we make the Borei Pri Hagafen, because then we're making a Borei Pri Hagafen on a kos that's not full. And he calls that a kos pogum. It's blemished. It's not a full kos. So what do? We start the Borei Pri Hagafen on a full kos, and then we pour some out before we complete the kos. That's what the Ramah says. Now let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois katan, dalet, kidei shelo yeh. The Ramah said, we pour it out before the end of the Borei Pri Hagafen so that the kos shouldn't be a kos pogum. Says the Mishnah, what does this mean? Hainu. The Ramah is explaining to you why he's saying that you should pour out some wine, but you should do it before the end of the bracha. Why don't you do it before the beginning of the bracha? Explains the Ramah, because if you're going to pour it out before you make the bracha, then you're making the Borei Pri Hagafen on a kos that's not full. That's a blemished kos. That's a kos pogum. Okay, so make the whole Borei Pri Hagafen and then pour out the wine. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, that's also not an eitzah. You can't make the Borei Pri Hagafen on a full kos and then pour out some of the wine. You made a Borei Pri Hagafen on a full cup of wine, and now you're pouring some of the wine that you just made a bracha on onto the ground? So this is what the Mishnah Berurah is explaining. The Mishnah Berurah is explaining the Ramah. The Ramah says you gotta pour out some wine, but you should do it in the middle of the Borei Pri Hagafen. Why? You can't do it before the Borei Pri Hagafen, because then you're making a Borei Pri Hagafen on a kos that's not full. That's a kos pogum. You can't say the whole Borei Pri Hagafen and then pour out wine, because that's a bezayin to the kos shel bracha. You're denigrating the kos shel bracha. I just made a beautiful bracha on wine, and now I'm spilling it on the ground. So you can't pour the wine out before, you can't pour the wine out after, so you got to pour the wine out in the middle of the Borei Pri Hagafen. That was the Ramah's eitzah. Now says the Mishnah Berurah. First he says, he finished explaining the Ramah. This is why, according to the Ramah, you pour out the wine in middle of the bracha. But, says the Chavetz Chaim, but hold your horses. Wait till you see what's coming. Why are we pouring out wine? So the Ramah said, we're pouring out wine for a Siman bracha, to show that in this house, wine flows like water. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the Achrayim agree. Don't follow this Ramah. Don't pour out the wine in the middle of the bracha. Ella, what you should do is, what we all do, when you're pouring your kais for Avdallah, yishbechenu mole al kol gedoisav, you should fill up the kais full to the brim, sheyeshafech ala aretz, you should overflow the kais when you're filling it up. So before Avdallah even began, overflow the kais. And that's going to be your siman for shefa. That's going to be your siman bracha. That wine is flowing like water in this house. Now you solved all the problems. When you make the bari priagafen, you're going to make it on a full kais because it is full. And when you finish the bari priagafen, it's still going to be full. And you have your siman bracha anyway, because when you filled up the kais, you allowed it to overflow. The gam zeh yesh l'mayit b'chelik hanishbach. But, says the Chavetz Chaim, don't go crazy with your siman bracha. Don't go crazy with your shefa. Don't be over baltashchis. Don't just pour, I want a lot of shefa, so I'll pour a half a bottle of wine, and I'll just let it keep on overflowing. No, don't do that. Hefsid misham, hefsid mashkin. That would be baltashchis. You're just wasting wine. It's a siman bracha. Let it overflow a little bit, and that will be your siman bracha. We'll stop over here. We'll continue next time with Mishnah Berurah is Katan Vav. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be megan on Gans Klal Yisrael. The Rabban Shalom should send Taka Eliyahu Hanavi. The Rabban Shalom should send Yeshua's for Parnasa, Shidduchim, and the Geula Shlema. To all those in need, we should be zeichet to see the Bias Kal Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu. Amen. Be well.